Nice for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll begin by just acknowledging the two tragic accidents occurring here and in my home state of Pennsylvania, and I think they both underscore how delicate system is, and just offer my prayers and thoughts for the families that grieve the loss of their loved ones at this moment. Our work here is important. Mr. McLaughlin, your testimony highlights, the threats, but also the benefits. And so, like much of what we deal with in common society today is a balancing act, right? And so now, as I understand it, Dallas-Fort Worth has developed their own drone detection system. Can you kind of talk us through the approval process with the FAA and what we might be able to do here on this committee to assist other airports? And then I have some other questions, but just that, what's that approval process like?
Yes, sir. And to be clear, we haven't developed our own.
Okay.
We've
purchased one?
We've utilized one through a TSA existing contract, and then we ran a pilot program that was under the FAA approved process. And that's the standard referred to as the 7460 FAA approval process that just ensures that things that we install in our airport are safe around aircraft.
Right. And so you're basically saying with that, then it comes as a pre-approved package for utilization because you got it through the agency or with the agency's blessing. So that's pretty, could I say, off the shelf? Any airport that can afford it could purchase it.
So I would say, in speaking with my peers, that yes, on the one hand, it's off the shelf, and I'll tell you the approval process was actually very, very quick. But I would say that across our community, I don't know that it's widely understood how relatively easy it is for systems that have been deemed to be safe in an airport environment. So
do you think that airports just aren't aware that it's available, or is it an affordability issue? If you've got Dallas-Fort Worth is a pretty large airport, but there are a lot of smaller ones. So is it that they're unaware that they don't have the problem, or it's unaffordable, or a combination of all three?
I think it's a combination of many factors. You keep in mind that any system that you purchase and install, you then also have to operate. And most airports operate at least 16 hours a day. Even small ones operate 16 hours a day. Many, like mine, operate 24/7. Those systems do require, both from a detection perspective, you've got to have someone who can see the blip when it happens, and if we were to get into mitigation, you have to have people that can respond. So cost is an issue for airports, certainly, but it's always a balancing act. Again, for an airport like mine with 7 runways and 27 square miles in the center of the NAS, it's in our best interest to make sure that we can keep the airfield running.
How many? What's the personnel utilization for your system? How many folks are dedicated to working?
Right. So again, candidly, for an airport like DFW, we require no net new heads to do this work because we have a standing team that's constantly monitoring the operation. If I was in charge of a rural, small airport, I might have to add staff to be able to monitor that equipment 24/7.
Okay. Ms. Ellman, it's like Groundhog Day to me here. We've been at this for at least 10 years now, right? The FAA seems to, for whatever reason, blow through the deadlines over and over again. And I think it does hinder the drone industry in the United States of America with being competitive with foreign actors. Can you kind of describe how the FAA's reluctance or delays, lags affect the industry? And then something you said regarding Mr. Larson's questioning piqued my interest, where you said everybody should have access to the remote ID, or essentially, I'm just thinking about that. What if you have a large tract of ground, and I don't, but what if you do, and you privately want to fly your UAS to look at your cattle or enjoy flying your UAS, if that's something you do? Who else's business should that be? Why should anybody else care? And I mean, there are privacy concerns on both sides of this issue.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So I'll take your questions in order, Congressman. So first, with regard to delays on the rulemaking, It is a source of frustration for the community. There are a few rules that we've talked about today, Part 108, which would enable, scale beyond visual line of sight for commercial, compliant, authorized drone users that would provide a normalized rule set. That would also help because the more normalized and transparent rule set that we have here in the United States, the more people know what the rules are, and the more there's compliance, and the more people can identify outliers, right? So that's also important. The 2209 rulemaking has been outstanding since literally 2016. Congress mandated this rule. We're now almost a decade later.
Right.
We still don't have it. So, the FAA has actually done some good work getting the rules developed. They stalled in the interagency process during the last administration. And we would urge the Trump administration to really take these and run. We see this as a really great opportunity to, the Trump administration has a really great ground record of during the first term in terms of his drone agenda. There was good progress that was made, including around drone innovation and drone security. And we would hope to see that carried forward this term. We're happy to work with the administration on that. With regard to your second question around privacy issues, certainly that is a very good question, and that's one of the reasons why we appreciate your committee's legislation's focus where there are flight-restricted areas. So commercial drone operators know they shouldn't be flying there anyways. This is not about, we don't have a privacy right to fly in flight-restricted areas such as near airports, for example, or at, crowded sports stadiums which are covered by a temporary flight restriction, or at nuclear facilities. And so that there are privacy questions, but they're much mitigated mitigated in terms of flight-restricted areas.
Ms. Elman, I'm going to ask you respond to the third question to Mr. Perry in writing. Time's expired.